Our speaker today is Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller, an ordained New Thought minister with degrees in multiple sciences and a previous career as a futurist. She is the author of over 25 books. You can take a look at a few on our back bookcase there. And she's the director of research at Gaia Living Systems Institute and the host of the radio program Noetic Moments. This is where she explains what consciousness is, what it does, and how our lives could be different if we understood it. As the spiritual leader of Ocean Unity Church, Reverend Ruth provides classes and counseling services as well as regular Sunday talks. Her message today is celebrating abundance. This is appropriate since we're in the middle of a sacred season. Passover just ended. The days of resurrection are in progress. Ramadan continues and Earth Day is coming up. All of these holy celebrations are, in fact, appreciations of abundance. Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller will help us see the underlying connections of these events and ways we can honor the abundance of life that is ours. Please welcome Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller.
Go, Ruth.
Charlie's heard me before. So I need to switch on the mic. Yes. Right. There's another mic. All right. Is that better? Can you hear me a little more clearly? I love that. And this is here and this is working and she's going to adjust the volume so you can hear me even more clearly. How do you like that?
I'm not getting it. It goes 2 clicks over.
Well, let's try it again. There we go. Try that.
Okay.
Is that even better?
Yes.
Glad to hear that. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Such a treat to be here. You'll notice that in that description, I said that the resurrection season or time of resurrection is continuing. We're used to celebrating that on one day. But over the next 10 days following the Sunday, this guy kept appearing in odd places. He would show up with people walking down the road. He'd show up in a locked room. He'd show up in all kinds of places. The resurrection was an opportunity for people to experience the presence of what they saw as the embodiment, the incarnation of divinity in all kinds of ways and places. And we get to do that all the time because it's not just in one person. We are all, as Myrtle Fillmore heard very clearly one day, children of God. We are all, as the Course in Miracles says, the Son of God. All of us together are that. We are all the incarnation, the embodiment of divinity. There is only one presence. I can't have a separate presence. There's only one presence, yeah? So the season of resurrection continues for several days. And for most people, it continues all the way to Pentecost, which is somewhere in June. Yeah, because Pentecost is when people began to feel that presence as the Holy Spirit working in them. And we'll talk about that when we get there. This is also Passover is completed, but many people are still, in that space of Passover. And just to give you a sense of it, if you didn't grow up in that tradition, it is the time when the people who say every day, God, thank you for bringing us out of Egypt and leading us to our own land. They have spent a week living and reliving that experience again. The children of Israel. And many of the people, the first apostles of Jesus, would say that because we honor that man's beingness as divinity in our lives, we are also the children of Israel. We are the children of God. We are part of the Abrahamic covenant in official terms. So as we acknowledge that process has happened, what we're actually acknowledging is that we are free from the bondage of the past. That's what Passover is about. That in this moment now, as I awaken to the presence and the one power, I am freed from the bondage of old thoughts, old feelings, old assumptions about how the world works. This is also Ramadan. It's running from March 31 to April 29. It's an ancient festival, long before Muhammad. It had been around. In fact, he was honoring Ramadan when he had the revelation that led to the recital that the angel came to him and said, recite, and it became the Quran. So Muhammad was already fasting for a month when he was in the cave, and during that month received the revelation that became the Quran. So all of that energy, all of that awareness that God's presence is with us here and now has been a huge part of what's been going on for the last couple of weeks. I mean, there are 8 billion people on the planet today, and about 4 billion of them were engaged in honoring the presence of divinity for about a week. And some of them still are. Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine if half the people in any group were honoring the presence of divinity? How would that feel to be in a group where that's the case? Well, the whole planet is a group of humanity. The one, as the Course in Miracles calls it, Son of God, the one expression of divinity, the one that is aware of our divinity and expression thereof. That is what sapiens sapiens means. We are aware of that deeper knowing. We know that we know. And most of the philosophers of the 19th century said that was the distinction between humanity and the rest of the beings on the planet. All the other planets just lit, all the other planets, that's true too. All the other beings on the planet just live it. This odd thing that we call humanity knows that we live it. That is what they all said. And I think that's accurate. We know that we live it. Now, some people are suggesting that what is happening at this moment in time, at this transitional stage, is that we are not only knowing that we live the one power and the one presence, we're going to start actually experiencing that presence working as our primary mode of operation. And that's part of what all of the spiritual teachings have been trying to teach us for the last several thousand years. Oh my goodness. We get to live as if the presence and the power of all that is our primary way of experiencing life, our primary mode of accomplishing things. Our primary operational assumption. I'm trying not to hurt this thing. Little microphone, it's okay. And when we do that, one of the things that the futurists that I was working with when I first got into the field were saying is we begin to experience everything as the full, abundant supply of everything we could ever need. They called it the cornucopia economy. Anyone who's watched Star Trek knows what this looks like. You just simply say, cup of tea, please. Earl Grey, hot. And it's there and it's yours. You reach for the tool. You say, wrench, whatever the wrench is, and it's there. You say whatever, they called it a replicator, but it's basically the universe providing exactly what is needed in the moment because you know precisely what it is that you're calling for in order to be fulfilled in this moment, in order for your purpose to be fulfilled, satisfied. The cornucopia economy. When we know that who and what we are is the embodiment of the divinity that is the source and sustainer of all that is, then how can we not have precisely what is important and necessary for our next step in fulfillment right there all the time? We just have to kind of get out of the way. And that's what this season is about. It's about saying, all right, those old limiting ideas that kept me in the bondage of having to do everything materially, having to come up with money, having to ask someone else to do that or whatever, will be over. Because I won't have to, because I will know that it is done, and it is done. As Jesus taught in the Gospels. We see this over and over in the stories. There is another person that has been honored in the last few days and in the last week, and that is the person we call the Buddha. The man is Prince Gautama. He grew up very carefully sheltered. His father said, there is no way my child is ever going to know there's anything wrong in the world. He's going to grow up in a heavenly environment. Can you imagine what a child would be like if they never had any contact with any form of suffering? Someone began to start showing wrinkles, his dad would send them out of the palace, right? Someone began to have an illness, they would be isolated. The boy never saw anything that wasn't the beautiful perfection of humanity. And then, as one version of the story goes, he heard a woman singing a mournful song. And it woke something up in him that he had never experienced. And he followed the song. Palace grounds in that time and place were very large. And he followed the sound and found this young woman who was new to the palace. And she was singing a song of, I'd miss my homeland. And he'd never encountered anyone being anything other than perfectly cheerful. And his heartstrings, well, kind of like the Grinch, his heart grew 3 sizes that day. And he realized there must be more to the world. If she is missing this other place, there must be more out there than what I've been experiencing here. Well, by this time, his father had chosen him the perfect woman to be his wife. And he actually, she was pregnant. She was about to have a baby. And, well, they kept any difficulty she might possibly have had from her pregnancy away from him. And so then the next thing he knew, he had this offspring and he had this wife. And yet it didn't connect with this new place in him. And he didn't know what to do with this. And one night he had this dream and he saw himself on his favorite horse. And in this dream, he rode out through the city hall walls, the palace walls. And he called his father and he said, I need to see what's outside the palace walls. Well, his father was not about to let him go out by himself. And so his father staged the whole city so that everyone was young and beautiful and, all so happy to see him, kind of like Palm Sunday, Hosanna, Hosanna, right? And he's riding on, in some versions, one of the big palanquins on an elephant, right? And he's riding along and everyone is, just so glad to see him. And he's going, wow, it isn't so bad out here. I wonder, no wonder people like it out here. And then he happens to glimpse off in a little corner a man on crutches scurrying away down an alley. Someone who didn't get out of there fast enough because he was on crutches. And oh my goodness, what is that? What could that possibly be? And he leaps off the elephant in the middle of the parade. And it's hard to leap off an elephant's back, but he does. And he follows the man and he ends up in the depths of the darkness where people are doing the laundry and dyeing fabrics and where there is a lot of suffering. And it's like an ocean of pain washing over him. And he flips in that moment from thinking that everything is absolutely fabulous to thinking everything is really awful. It just sometimes looks fabulous. Can you imagine having that sudden awakening to the distress of the world? Well, very soon thereafter, he woke up in the middle of the night and he realized that dream that he had had of riding his horse through the gates was about to happen, because somehow everybody in the whole palace grounds was sound asleep. I'm trying not to do that.
It's not me.
It's not me. Oh, good. The microphone's doing weird things for those of you who are wondering. So he's there, he's awake, and he looks around him, everyone's sound asleep. So he quietly goes and he taps his best friend, the guy who's been his #1 buddy all of his life. And they go, and his horse is the only other person awake. Right? So he gets on the horse, the two of them get on his horse, and they start riding across the big palace grounds, and the gates simply open in front of him. And he rides off into the world. And through the night he rides and through, and in the morning they come to the great forest. He's never seen a forest. He's seen an orchard. There's an orchard on the grounds. He's never seen anything so dense and dark. And he realizes, I have to go there. And so he hugs his best friend and sends him home with the horse. And he walks into the forest. And he leaves, and his princely garb, that's on the horse too. So now all he is in is his loincloth, his gi. And he's walking through the forest, and he encounters some men who are living on nothing. You know, a dewdrop is their water for the day. A grain of rice that they happen to see that a bird may have dropped is their meal for the day. And they sleep on the ground and they meditate for days at a time. And he says, well, they seem to be happy. I will follow their path. And he does this for years. And always in every legend, there's a certain number, right? 7 years. He lives this way. So he was in his early 20s, so now he's approaching 30. And one day, as he's living this way, he's walking through the forest, but the forest borders on a river. And on the river is a man and a boat. And the man in the boat is well fed. He's fishing. He's singing. He is one very happy man. And Gautama goes, whoops. One doesn't have to do what I've been doing in order to be happy. And that truly is the moment of his enlightenment. But that's not the day that was celebrated last Saturday, a week ago. Because he spent, after that moment, he sat down under a tree. Well, the reason he sat down under that tree was because a young village girl had seen him and had brought him a gift, a bowl of the rice pudding that his stepmother had made when he was a kid to give him delight. And in India, rice is cooked in milk with a sweetener. And it's a kind of a soupy, gelatinous, sweet, and wonderful thing. And that's what he had. And he went, oh, this is totally satisfying. One can be happy and satisfied without having all the riches in the world or doing without everything in the world. There is a middle way. So after he completed the bowl of pudding, which was the first real meal he'd had in 7 years, he sat down. And the tree is one of those great big trees. It's not a baobab, but it's a big tree that has wonderful shade, and he was protected from everything. And he sat there and he went into that state of meditation that he'd learned with the ascetics in the forest. And he realized that there were lots of hidden things in himself and in the world that had been troubling him. And he did not have to be troubled by them anymore. And that is portrayed as he defeated all the demons of the world by touching the earth. I touched the earth. It is the only reality of my experience. None of that is real. And then he sat there some more time. And in the world of legend and spiritual teaching, it was a full 40 days. And at the end of 40 days, he knew what he now knew, and he knew how to share that, speak that with others. And that is what was honored a few days ago in the word Wesak or Visak or Vesak, depending, or Vesak, depending on who's talking. But that was the moment where he could be the awakened one in the world. He had been awakened for 40 days, but he had completed the process and was able to be present to others in that awareness. Have you ever had that experience? You're sitting and you're spiritual and it's all feeling good, and then someone shows up and you can't stay there? Or you go out to try to share it and you just can't find the words? Well, Gautama became the awakened one, which is what Buddha means, when he knew he could be present with anyone in any circumstances and be clear about this middle way in which we are able to be free of the bondage of our past. Now, I said all of these celebrations were celebrations of abundance. And what I've been talking about is freedom from the past, right? Isn't that what abundance is? Freedom from the limitations that we have either imposed on ourselves or felt imposed upon us of the past. When we have abundant awareness of the presence and the power working in our lives. In fact, Emma Hopkins, as many of you know, one of my favorite teachers, defines prosperity as knowing that the power is working in and through me for my well-being and the well-being of all in that process. That is prosperity. I don't know who it was that left us a gift of books here. It's beautiful. Thank you, Lucy. And one of those is Neville Goddard. His 5 lessons in knowing how to bring forth into our experience that which we know is ours in spirit. Yes, abundance, right? As we begin to live from that knowing, the kind of economy that those futurists I used to work with are calling for, or were calling for, and still say is possible in spite of what corporate capitalism is trying to make happen. The cornucopia economy is not only possible, it's absolutely the logical and infallible outcome of knowing that the power and presence that sustains this universe is working in me and through me for my well-being and the well-being of the whole, so that all may live life abundantly. In the Christian world, Jesus says, I and the Father are one. Therefore, all may have life more abundantly. In our world, he tells us to all beings who are willing to have ears to hear and eyes to see, that that same loving, sustaining, creative power is us as well. And every time we choose to live that, every time we have these celebrations to remind us of it, the world aligns itself on our well-being and the well-being of the whole. There is no other possible experience. That is what the Buddha taught. Thousands of young men followed him. Some merchants hated that. Some fathers were very upset. You're taking my son away from me. And Buddha's saying, no, 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 I'm not taking him away from you. Your expectations, yes, but not you. And that's the other piece. Those limits that have been bounding us, that have been tying us, that some people say have enslaved us, are the expectations and our attachments to the expectations that we've held in the past, that someone has given us, someone has taught us, someone has trained us, and the culture continues to reinforce that if it isn't like that, it isn't okay, whatever that is, that expectation is. And so if one reads the Buddha's sutras, or one reads the Yogi Sutras, the Yoga Sutras, one learns to release those expectations, as Gautama did under the tree, as Gautama did through his life experiences, really, right? The universe is designed for us to be freed of the limitations of the past. Those of you who know the New Testament are probably remembering what Paul said, for when I was a child, right? I saw the world as a child does, but now I am a man. And then there's another line. I used to see the world through a glass, a mirror, darkly. Have you ever had one of those old mirrors that it's kind of black looking? In fact, for a little while, they were very stylish to have these kind of blackish mirrors. And you see it and you can't see everything clearly. You see that there are things, but you may not see them clearly. But with these sparkling fresh windows and mirrors, we see very clearly, right? That's what we're being invited to do. So all of this time that starts, excuse me, with the first full moon after the spring equinox. Sorry about that. And for the Mohammedans, the Muslims, it started with the first new moon after the spring equinox, and we'll go to the next new moon. But this period is our opportunity to say, I'm going to look at the mirror of the world clearly, and I'm going to see the divine presence in and through and as me, working for my well-being and the well-being of everyone. Yes? Yes. Now, some of you know that when I have that little tickle in my throat, it's because there's something in me that wants to be said that didn't get said. And I think that that has to do with the word love. Love. When we see through the glass clearly, we see the love. We've been trained in our culture not to see love working in our lives, to think of love as only this one little thing that we can do between two adults who are consenting. What? Or maybe between mom and kid, mom and child. Do you know that fathers have a physiological change when the mother has a child? Is that cool? There is literally a physiological change in a father's body when the mom has a baby. Yeah, love. It shows up in our physiology. Seeing clearly is seeing through the eyes of love, the love that is present, that is sustaining us, that is guiding us, that is supporting us in becoming who and what we were here to be. We all came here with a purpose. This is what the Buddha calls dharma. The fulfillment of our purpose is the abundance of our being. When we have that sense of fulfillment, there is nothing we need or want. The guide that is our shepherd is our love and our knowing that that love is here and now working in and through each and every one of us. That's what the throat wanted me to say. It's such a treat to be with you and to share the abundance of the space we have and the ability to be together, both in person and electronically, and to know, because this is being recorded, that this is happening across space and time. And as we feel that, then we can be even more who we truly are. Because not only is that presence working in us right now for this moment, it's working through us for all time and all space, always. The Mormons teach that if you learn your genealogy, you can save the souls of previous generations. They have a kernel of truth in that. As we know truth, then all who are resonating with us across space and time know the truth more fully. And the truth is that who and what we are is the power and the presence, expressing and experiencing this fabulous planet that gives us all this good material stuff that we call Earth. And that's the end of this season, Earth Day. We honor the many ways that the earth is the manifestation of the power supporting and sustaining us all. For so it truly is. And so I say, let's meditate. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that word, by the way, is one of the best ways to increase our sense of abundance. So let us just breathe and relax in this place, in this time, this moment, and allow ourselves to feel the gratitude that must be how we feel when we consider all the ways we are being supported right now. All the comfort, all the energy, all the people, all the marvelous processes that are unfolding, that we can be here and now in this moment. Simply breathing. And even the breath itself is a gift of all those beings that provide the oxygen and the nitrogen and all the good stuff coming into the body with every breath. And we give as we exhale what they need to be happy and wonderfully supported in their lives. Breathing, giving and receiving the abundance of beingness. And we feel that wonderful breath of life moving into the body. And we can feel it moving through the body. And we can feel it moving beyond the body as we exhale. That breath of life that is available to all of us. And as we are aware of it, we feel it going deeper and deeper into the body. And as we feel that, we can feel the energy of this life-giving breath. That energy of the quantum field, that energy that is life, moving in the body and through it, and moving deeper and deeper into the soul of who we are, so that we are energized. More life, more well-being, more love flowing in and through us, simply because we breathe. We can feel that life and that love expanding beyond the body, filling this space, filling this community, just touching every heart and soul across this whole community and up and down the coast, so that all may know this life, this love, this sustaining abundance that is always present. And as we breathe, we feel our awareness expanding beyond the coast, across the ocean and the mountains, touching every heart and soul with that knowing of who and what we truly are, what all beings truly are, the expressions of the one, the love that is, shared and sharing. And as we breathe, we feel our own love embracing this marvelous mother, our earth. As she embraces us and promises and provides all that we would ever physically need for our fulfillment, our development, our purpose, becoming in perfect well-being. And as we're aware of that, we're aware that our individual purpose is the life purpose of all being, to know and feel and express and experience this love, this abundant life, this beauty and harmony and wisdom. And we are totally supported in that and cared for. And it always has been so and always will be so, here and now and forevermore. Truly, it is so. And now I claim that as my path, as our path henceforward, with the ancient Hebrew claim, Amen. And take another breath to bring ourselves back into our transformed world, our world in which all know the truth of this abundance that is the gift of life. Thank you all.